Hi everyone, this is Pastor Dan from Calvary Chapel, Cle Elum in Washington. There is no doubt that there's a lot of turmoil in our country today, and it's been going on pretty much nonstop for a number of years. Most of us have observed it, engaged in it, and allowed it to affect the attitudes that we're supposed to have as believers in Christ and as salt and light in the world. The truth is, the circumstances in our country that have supercharged this turmoil are probably not going to end anytime soon. I'm not sure they will ever end. Those of us who are students of Bible prophecy concerning the end times are very much aware that ungodliness and antagonism toward the things of God will only increase as the end draws near. As I've done prophecy updates in the years past, I've documented these trends year after year. Other Bible teachers that I respect and admire have done the same. These trends are not going to go away. But does this mean I have to let them ruin my disposition, my attitude, and my outlook for the future? I don't think so. Remember, we may not be able to control the things that are causing all this turmoil around us, but we can definitely control the way we deal with it and react to it. How do we stay hopeful and positive when there's so much negativity around us? Well, there's a number of ways that we can answer this, but I would like to focus today on just two verses that I was reading today from the book of Ephesians chapter 4. Paul says in Ephesians 4:31-32, "Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ forgave you." In these two verses, Paul gives a list of the things that we can remove from our lives that cause turmoil. And then he gives another list of things that we can bring into our lives that will help to reduce the turmoil that's closest to us and bring us the peace and the hope that we desire. First, he talks about what can be removed. Paul starts out with bitterness, and he uses a Greek word that speaks of a smoldering resentment, the kind that just keeps building and building inside you, making you sour and unloving. If we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to get rid of this bitterness. Next, Paul speaks of wrath, which is in the Greek is like a wild rage. A good illustration of this is straw that catches on fire. It burns very quickly, and before you know it, it's out. But in its path, there is much destruction. We've all seen this before in people, perhaps in ourselves. If we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to get rid of this wrath. Paul then speaks of anger. This anger speaks of an internal feeling and reflects a long-standing, continual anger. It's something you refuse to let go of, and it builds inside of you. Again, if we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to get rid of this anger. Then he speaks of clamor, which is a loss of control that results in a public outburst of emotions. The Greek word gives us the idea of letting everyone know how or what our grievance is. If we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to get rid of the clamor in our lives. Next, he talks about evil speaking, which is referring to an ongoing bitterness that rises in the heart and denigrates another person. Again, if we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to get rid of the times that we engage in this evil speaking. Paul says we have to put it away from us. Paul ends with malice, and malice speaks of all kinds of evil that comes from this vicious character that's produced from these other poisonous fruits. Each of these, Paul tells us, must be put away or removed from our lives if we ever hope to have an overall attitude that is hopeful and positive. Bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, evil speaking, and malice will keep us from being hopeful and positive more than just about anything. A child of God should not have these as fruits in his life. And did you notice how they are all linked together? You start with the resentful spirit, the bitterness, which leads to a quick burst of emotion, the wrath, which leads to a long-standing, continual feeling of anger that grows inside of you, that results in a public outburst of what you feel, the clamor, then into the tearing down of another person, the evil speaking, and then ends with a continual hateful disposition, the malice. Hey, don't hold on to this garbage. Let it go. If we don't, the idea of positivity and hopefulness will be a forgotten memory. Then he talks about what we can replace these totally destructive things with in verse 32. Instead of having a life that is characterized by being unkind, hard-hearted, unforgiving, and unloving, we should be the exact opposite. The first thing he says in verse 32 is that we should be kind to each other. And this is not a passive sort of response. It's love in action. It's reflected in what we do to each other. It's not a show that we put on for people to make them think we love them. We really do love them. And this should include, as much as possible, those who are creating the ungodliness and the antagonism in the world around us. If we are to interact with and engage with any of these ungodly and antagonistic people and hope to be heard, we cannot engage with them the way they engage with others that they oppose. We have to keep a cool head and speak kindly, because if we don't, then we're just creating a bigger fire that will result in more destruction. If we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to speak kindly toward others, even those that we disagree with intensely. Paul then says that we are to be tender-hearted, having compassion on each other. He says we are to try to understand where the other person is coming from and why they think the way they think. As we display the desire to first listen and understand, then maybe they will be willing to listen to us and give us a hearing. If we want our overall attitude to be more hopeful and positive, then we have to be more tender-hearted toward others. And Paul links this all to forgiveness. We must be willing to forgive others their faults against us. Why? Well, because of what God did for us, and that He forgave us. If God forgives us for sinning against Him, though we don't deserve it, then why can't we forgive others when they sin against us, though they don't deserve it? We can if we want. One of the things I've noticed over the years is I gain absolutely nothing by holding on to bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and malice. I gain nothing by speaking evil of others. Nothing ever gets better when I do these things. Things only get worse. But when I am kind, tender-hearted, and forgiving, there just doesn't seem to be any room for all of the other ugly attitudes that do nothing but drag me down and bum me out. I don't know about you, but I want to have a more positive and hopeful attitude so that I can be more useful to the Lord. So I intend to take this guidance from Paul and get serious about it in my own life. The world around me may not change, but I can change and have a more positive and hopeful attitude about things. So can you, by the way. How's this possible? Because God is still in control and He is still accomplishing His purposes, no matter how noisy and negative it is around us. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, would you give it a like, a comment, and share it on your own Facebook page so others might be helped too? And if you're in the Cle Elum area and you don't have a home church, would you consider joining us on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at 417 East Railroad Street in Cle Elum, Washington? Again, this is Pastor Dan from Calvary Chapel, Cle Elum. May the Lord help us to take on these attitudes that will bring more positiveness and more hopefulness to us as these days progress. And again, may the Lord bless you and strengthen you and help you as you continue to seek and serve Him.